And good morning to everyone here.
When Academy Award-winning actress Octavia Spencer delivered the 2017 commencement address at Kent State, Fox 8 made a public records request for her speaker's contract. Kent State, as a public, taxpayer-supported university, readily complied, showing that the university paid Ms. Spencer $100,000 plus first-class airfare. That amount caused some controversy.
I don't really know if it is worth it because that is a lot of money. So I feel like it is fair that they do get paid, but that amount is pretty intense.
Kent State said the publicity generated, the fact that it used donated funds to pay Spencer, and that it united all its campuses in one commencement made Spencer's appearance worth the $100,000. A few months later, Octavia Spencer spoke here in a question and answer format at a fundraising luncheon in Cleveland for the Cuyahoga Community College Foundation. Fox 8 made a public records request of Tri-C for Ms. Spencer's speaker's contract, but this time trying to find out what she was paid led to a court battle that we fought for well over a year.
Is this case one of first impression for the state of Ohio under that Public Records Act?
The fight led us here to Ohio's 8th District Court of Appeals in downtown Cleveland. Judge Patricia BLACKMON was referring to a relatively new provision in Ohio law that we employed. It allows anyone to file a one-page complaint, required by law to be handwritten, with Ohio's Court of Claims when their public records request has been denied.
It's supposed to be easier for, members of the public, journalists, to go to the Court of Claims and enforce their public requests cheaply, without a lawyer.
That's not how it worked in this case. We filed that one-page complaint seeking Spencer's contract, and the Tri-C Foundation responded by hiring a law firm. The Court of Claims asked for legal briefs, and Fox 8 retained attorneys. The foundation argued that it is a separate entity from Tri-C, the college, and therefore not subject to the Public Records Act. After a back-and-forth legal battle, the matter wound up before the 8th District Court of Appeals in this courtroom.
Tri-C Foundation has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in recent years lobbying for the benefit of Tri-C. Now again,
well, it's its alter ego, right? I mean, it doesn't exist without Tri-C.
From our perspective, absolutely.
There is no question that Tri-C, the college, is subject to Ohio's Public Records Act. Here, the question for the judges was, how closely is Tri-C's foundation connected to Tri-C? Is the foundation what the law terms the functional equivalent of Tri-C, the college? The closer the two are connected, the more likely the foundation is subject to the Public Records Act.
The Tri-C Foundation has a specific and limited charitable mission, which is raising money to help and support Tri-C scholarship students.
The foundation's attorney stressed how the two entities are separate, including in some ways financially.
The Tri-C Foundation does not manage or hold any funds that are in the name of Tri-C, the college.
The judges asked several questions about how closely Tri-C and its foundation are connected, including the fact that the foundation's president, Megan O'Brien, on the left of your screen, is also the vice president of development for Tri-C, the college.
Even Ms. O'Brien, she says, I'm vice president, Tri-C Foundation.
She wears different hats, and importantly, the two entities
Doesn't that give you any pause about the test?
No, Your Honor.
If Tri-C didn't exist, there would be no foundation.
Potentially, if the foundation would have to change its mission or otherwise.
And its name?
Potentially, but just because it's
clearly its mission.
The questioning continued.
You can't just say all out of the blue, there's this foundation that's called the Tri-C Foundation.
You can, and it was created to be a charitable.
But without the college, there is no Tri-C Foundation.
The fact that the Tri-C Foundation supports what the government does does not.
It's its entire mission.
In a 3-0 opinion written by Judge BLACKMON, the court said, "We conclude that the Tri-C Foundation is the functional equivalent of a public office. Under the public records law, SHEIL is entitled to the unredacted Spencer contract." And here it is. The Tri-C Foundation paid Octavia Spencer $150,500 to attend the presidential luncheon, plus first-class expenses. Her first obligation of this day started with a VIP meet and greet that included Tri-C President Dr. Alex Johnson. That was at 11:40 a.m. Her obligations ended at 2 o'clock. 2 hours and 20 minutes, $150,500. That's what the public record that is her contract shows.
It's critically important that people challenge denials of their public records requests so that the public can be more informed about how its government is operating.
A statement from Foundation President Megan O'Brien sent with the contract said, in part, that speaker fees are paid with private, not public dollars. The statement added that the Spencer event netted approximately $1 million for scholarships. So why not just say that you raised $1 million to fund scholarships at this luncheon? Why challenge the public records request and spend an extraordinary amount of money that likely could also go to scholarships on attorney's fees? We wanted to ask these questions and more of Dr. Johnson or Ms. O'Brien, but through a spokesperson, both declined to do an interview. This case may well make it easier now for people in the future to get public records in Ohio.
It should reduce barriers to getting a judicial determination that these types of records should be released. It's important because you want to know what your government is doing.
And if you want to know how much the Tri-C Foundation spent on attorneys to fight this case, that's tomorrow's story. Bill SHEIL, Fox 8 IT.
It's one of first impression under this particular statute.
What judges call a case of first impression means a case that is setting the law in some fashion for the first time, which is why we believed it was so important to pursue this particular case.
But I think it's a very positive step for the taxpayer, and everyone's going to be citing SHEIL versus Horton when they're arguing for disclosure.
The Academy Award-winning actress Octavia Spencer spoke at Kent State's commencement in 2017, receiving $100,000 plus first-class airfare for her appearance. Kent State, as a public taxpayer-supported university, readily released her contract under Ohio's Public Records Act. But when Ms. Spencer spoke just months later, here in a question-answer format at the presidential luncheon for the Cuyahoga Community College Foundation, Tri-C said it didn't have to disclose how much Spencer was paid. It argued its foundation was a separate entity, a private institution, not subject to the Public Records Act. We disagreed, and through our attorneys,
Tri-C, the college, has to report the foundation as a component unit on its financial statements.
Took the matter to court. We did so initially by filing a complaint through Ohio's Court of Claims, handwritten as required by law. It's a newer method that is supposed to make it easier and supposedly less expensive for all taxpayers to challenge the denial of a public records request. Our case became the first one filed this way to reach the 8th District Court of Appeals in downtown Cleveland, making the question of the status of the Tri-C Foundation a case of first impression.
The only issue that we have to determine is whether there's clear and convincing evidence that this is a public institution.
Attorneys for the Tri-C Foundation argued that it was not, and therefore we were not entitled to the contract showing how much Spencer was paid.
There's simply not clear and convincing evidence to overcome Fox 8's burden.
But the closer the Tri-C Foundation is connected to Tri-C the college, the more likely it is a public institution, a functional equivalent, as the law calls it. The judges question how close some of those connections are, including the fact that Megan O'Brien, on the left here, is both president of the Tri-C Foundation and vice president of development for Tri-C the college.
And the executive director is employed by the college as well as the foundation.
Separately, and she has separate duties to each organization, and she wears separate hats.
Fox 8's attorneys argued the close connections were obvious.
Famous United States Supreme Court case. You know it when you see it. And that's really what confronts this court today.
In a unanimous 3-0 opinion written by Judge BLACKMON, the court said, "We conclude that the Tri-C Foundation is the functional equivalent of a public office. Under the public records law, SHEIL is entitled to the unredacted Spencer contract." Public policy expert John PLECNIK says the fact that the case began with the new process that goes through the Court of Claims is significant.
So this is really new ground that we're breaking, and I think it's positive from the perspective of disclosure and taxpayers that the first major decision says err on the side of disclosure.
This is the Octavia Spencer contract. The Tri-C Foundation paid her $150,500 to attend the presidential luncheon, plus first-class expenses. In a statement attributed to Megan O'Brien, the Tri-C Foundation said speaker fees are paid with private, not public dollars, and that the Spencer event netted approximately $1 million for scholarships. We wanted to interview either Megan O'Brien or Tri-C President Dr. Alex Johnson to ask, among other questions, why try so hard not to disclose that you spent just over $150,000 if you made $1 million? But through a spokesperson, both declined interviews.
I think you're seeing more government agencies and municipalities try to use nonprofits to avoid disclosure. But the sunshine laws make it very clear that we have a right as taxpayers to know how our money is spent. And just running that public money through a private entity doesn't mean you have any less right to know what the contract was, how much was spent.
And in trying to keep us, and therefore you, from learning the value of the Spencer contract, the Tri-C Foundation spent an extraordinary amount on attorneys. In fact, more money than it spent to bring Octavia Spencer to Cleveland. These are copies of checks we were sent as part of the response to a new public records request we made for the legal costs incurred by the Tri-C Foundation or Tri-C to fight this case. We received copies of 18 checks, many running into the tens of thousands of dollars apiece. All total, the Tri-C Foundation, the arm of Tri-C that raises funds for student scholarships, spent over $236,000 of its money to fight this legal battle. Over $236,000. Try not to tell us it spent just over $150,000 on a luncheon where it claimed to make $1 million. So was that $236,000 money well spent? Hope Beck is a Tri-C student.
Probably not.
Because?
Because it should go to students who need it.
This case may have set a precedent, but Professor PLECNIK hopes it's done even more than that.
If we can build off of SHEIL versus Horton and build a culture of disclosure, it won't even be necessary for taxpayers to bring these lawsuits.
The impact on the law of this case will be measured over time. How much of a difference it will make, we will have to wait to see. Bill SHEIL, Fox 8 IT. It cost Tri-C, the community college, over $18,000 to purchase an annual membership for its president, Dr. Alex Johnson, plus a month's worth of his expenses at the Signature Country Club in Solon. A club membership is written into Dr. Johnson's employment contract. But this isn't the only country club membership associated with Tri-C. Its foundation also has a separate membership for recruiting donors at the Canterbury Golf Club in Beechwood. That cost the foundation an additional $7,800 a year. In addition, the college also has a membership to the private Union Club downtown for over $3,000 a year and a fourth private club membership to the Shoreby Club along Lake Erie. That one costs over $4,000 a year. The question here is a matter of degree. In order to keep Dr. Johnson connected, do you need the 4 private club memberships?
We feel that that's an expense that we invest in him. He has an opportunity again to stay connected with folks from a philanthropic nature as well as recruit others.
We spoke to John Scory, chairperson of the Tri-C Foundation Board, along with Andrew Randall, chairperson of the Tri-C Board of Trustees, as well as to Dr. Johnson himself. All of them see these type of expenditures, some running into the thousands of dollars for events and entertainment of donors, as part of what has helped Tri-C grow both its foundation and its overall success. You would say they are necessary?
Yes, because in some instances, if you want to raise funds to the level that we have, you have to put yourself in a position to do that.
I'm taking 15 credit hours right now, and that's like $2,000.
That you're paying?
Yes.
Tanya is a Tri-C sophomore. She understands the college, like other educational institutions, needs to spend money to raise money for scholarships, including perhaps cultivating donors at private clubs. But she wonders, do you need 4 clubs, including 2 country clubs?
If they can cut down, they should, with the country clubs.
Likewise, Kayla Wilson, a Tri-C student, was most struck by one expense we shared with her that approached $3,600. Would you be surprised to know they spent $3,600 on flowers at an event?
On flowers. That's crazy.
Wilson hopes to one day be a dental hygienist.
It's a very difficult and stressful process, so yeah.
To save for college?
Yes, it is.
As students, Kayla and Tanya do not have the full context of these expenditures. The flowers, for example, were part of a large event designed to thank big donors. And there's no question that Tri-C has thrived under Dr. Johnson. The value of the foundation is now approaching $100 million, a significant increase, and the graduation rate is up significantly as well. Still, some of the expenditures at this taxpayer-supported institution may surprise you, starting with Dr. Johnson's own contract. In the last fiscal year, Tri-C paid Dr. Johnson over $390,000, made up of his base salary, a retention bonus, and a performance bonus. His contract, approved by the Board of Trustees, says he receives a $36,000 a year residence allowance, and Tri-C provides him a car to drive, paying for both his gas and his OnStar navigation system. Perks, by the way, are common these days in the contracts of college presidents.
We believe it's consistent with someone of his caliber, his skill set, his breadth of responsibility. And my thought is that if it was explained to someone in both sides of it, they would say, I understand.
I think some folks would be surprised by what's become normal. We pay for their gas, we pay for their NAV system, we pay for their house. But do you think the taxpayers who've approved 3 tax hikes in the last 6 years for this institution think that their money is going for things like that are in that contract?
When 64% pass our current levy and 68% of the community that voted for our capital expenditure, I think that's a fairly ringing endorsement of what we're doing at the college. Now, they didn't vote on Dr. Johnson's contract, but embedded in their vote is the stewardship that he provides. And I like the word appropriate better than fair. Or, an individual might have would they be surprised? I think it's appropriate.
The difference between appropriate and necessary, for us, I don't really think there is a distinction.
And there is a track record of success here. I would challenge that some are not necessary. I would challenge that you could buy your own gas or buy your own NAV system and that they're not necessary. Is that a fair challenge?
Well, when you talk about those things, Bill, from my vantage point, they're not fair. And let me tell you why.
Dr. Johnson says unlike some other college presidents, he doesn't get a car allowance or a car, but drives a vehicle owned by Tri-C, a Chevrolet Traverse.
So the responsibility of ownership rests on the college. What they do is allow me to drive it, right? So the gas, the insurance, the OnStar, the college and Trustee Randall have agreed to accept that responsibility. Now, if they were giving me a car allowance, then it'd be a different story altogether.
There's a lot of success with this institution. Is the success born of all these expenditures? Or is there an entitlement mentality because we've had success, therefore it's okay we spend some money like this?
No, I think there's a cost of doing business.
Right. If you go to any institution, any organizations, there are going to be things that you might question.
Now, there's also been operational changes over the last few years that have saved this institution millions of dollars.
We're about transparency. We're here to help you do that as well.
Does any of what we've discussed give you any pause?
I think you have really asked the pivotal question. We will take stock of how we can become better. But in this particular instance, as I review those things that you have asked us about, I feel very, very strongly that they were indeed necessary because of what? The outcomes.
Bill SHEIL, Fox 8 News.